Here's my favorite part about this. You said, I'll be at your house 5:30 to 6 o'clock.
Yep.
It's now 8 o'clock. And we're just now getting started.
Technically, it's 7:57.
Yeah.
Still made it.
So anyone that watches the full tournament series knows that Kyle is typically the last one in the truck, the last one to the ramp, pretty much the last one anywhere. Somehow our kids, before they could even walk, would beat him into the truck to make it to the ramp. So no surprise that we're starting a little later.
This is Kyle, get to the podcast, please.
Oh.
Call for that. It actually is embarrassing when Cora was beating me to the truck in her first season.
And my embarrassing moment right now is that when you flipped the camera around right there, that one.
Yep.
And I looked at it and I thought, wow, I really am Yeti'd out right now.
It looks good.
I have
dude.
a Yeti sweatshirt. I have a Yeti water bottle and a Yeti backpack. And I put the backpack there because I was like, I just got it. It looks cool. It's new Ranchero.
What do they say? First one's free?
First one's free. Everyone else's are available in February, February. I was like, that's a little too much branding maybe, but
wait,
it was on accident.
Do we get to start decorating our side of the podcast booth too? Is that a thing?
You don't get control of
I
it.
will literally take anything anyone gives me for free. We'll start the bidding at $20 actually. $20 and you can put whatever you want right here next to me. I will everything other than tattoos on my face, I will take for sponsorship.
You sell yourself way too cheap. Okay. Let's get into this thing. We didn't really know what we're going to talk about, but kind of came to the conclusion of getting into this season, this upcoming season. You're about to take off. Mm-hmm. You're leaving tomorrow.
Yep.
On what is kind of your annual
walkabout trip.
That's its official name.
Yeah.
You are taking your sidekick Bodie.
Yep.
This is going to be his first walk around trip.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if any of you guys follow Kyle on social, you've seen Bodie's, I don't even know what to call it, his demeanor, his ability to destroy everything you own.
Yeah, he's a Siberian Husky, 1 year old and a couple days for change, but actually wanted to talk about this today. So I just got Bodie neutered and he is recovering. He has like the little stitch incision or whatever, and they've stitched him up. Yeah. And he ripped his stitches 2 days ago, and it was like the week mark. And I was like, oh, we were so close to making it.
He ripped his cone off too, didn't he?
Oh, he's got his cone off like 4 times, and I'm like trying to keep him chill, but he's like a male husky, 100% pent up energy. And the last couple of days I've been trying to like keep him down and keep him like relaxed, and he ripped his stitches, and I took him back to the vet.
Yeah.
And the vet's like, okay, like it's not that bad. I'm going to give you medicine to sedate him more. So he kind of chills out. So the last 2 days has been me trying to find ways to knock my dog out basically with these drugs. But the problem is he is so good at finding the pills in the hot dogs or whatever I do. He is like a bomb dog, but for this medicine, I'll give him a hot dog and like stuff this pill in there. It's like a tiny little pill. And I'll hear it hit the ground when he's like, after he's like chewed up the hot dog. I'm like, oh. So this is where it gets weird. Right before this is why I was late actually. Okay. I go to the grocery store and I'm like, I'm not going to be fooled by this dog again. So I buy hot dogs and peanut butter. Like not like he doesn't like the cheap hot dogs. So he likes like the chicken sausage, like seasoned, like straight up, like he doesn't mess with the other ones. So I walk up the check-in counter and I have
high maintenance.
I have a thing of peanut butter and a thing of chicken sausage, a pack. And the guy looks at me and I knew this was going to come, but he goes, I'm assuming these are going to be eaten separate, but do you know something I don't know? And I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to trick my dog.
It's actually together, but they're for my dog.
But what I said, I was like, I'm trying to trick my dog. And he goes, oh my God. So we had this awkward moment of like, he's like, what are you trying to do with peanut butter and these hot dogs to trick your dog? And it's like, I'm trying to trick him to like feed him medication. So
I'm still waiting to hear the part on why you're late.
This is the part why I was late. So I get back to the house and I'm like, he's going to eat the peanut butter hot dogs, like for sure. First go, spits out the pill. I'm like, dude, you got to be kidding me. So then like, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? Like, figure this out and like try another method and like doesn't work. Try to like force the pill down his mouth and he like doesn't. And this is like me in my kitchen trying to figure out this with the dog.
Yeah. Last
situation I actually figured it out and he hasn't caught on to it yet because he's caught on to me over this period of time of giving him the pills. So I'm sitting in my kitchen and I'm using a butter knife to crush these pills up on my counter. And I'm creating like, I feel like a little bit of like a drug dealer here. Like I'm like creating lines of like this dog, like sedation pill. And, I'm like cutting it, like pushing it down, like mixing it in the peanut butter and like, he's just like, he's eating it up. So he doesn't know. So my dog is 100% knocked out right now, just laying on the couch.
It's a good thing since you're moving out of your house and who knows what he could do to that place.
Yeah. You've seen firsthand.
I have.
If anybody hasn't seen the most destructive he's done to that Tundra headliner was number 1 on the list of Bodie things he's destroyed. He is taking down blinds. He's taking down doors in my house. This dog is not a real dog. It is an actual like terrorist.
How long did you have at work? I didn't expect to talk this much about Bodie, but that's just how this podcast goes. It's just wherever our conversations take us. How long had you had Bodie when the guy showed up to your house to install Wi-Fi?
Oh, that was like, he wasn't
very old.
He was probably like 6 months.
Yeah.
But we were out on the lake.
Yeah. You and me were on the lake. You had forgot that the guy was showing up to install the Wi-Fi at your house. And you told the guy the code, right? Or whatever. You told him how to get in the house and you let him know there's a dog in there. He's friendly. And what did that guy say on the phone?
So when I gave him the code to get in the house and I'm on the phone with him still, you remember this? And he opens up the door and he goes, oh man. He's like, I am so sorry. He's like, it looks like someone broke into your house. But he was like referring to my dog who had literally just tore everything apart in the house. Like there was blinds, everything but the couch. Like miraculously, he was like chilling. But other than that, like the house was an absolute mess. And so
when we got back, it did look like someone broke into your house.
Cardboard everywhere because I was just moving in and it was a mess. But
just the beginning of
those are the tales of Bodie. We've you've seen it.
So, I mean, that all goes back to, I'm so curious to see what he tears up in your camper, in your truck. There's no headliner left in the Tundra, so he doesn't have that.
The Tundra was the worst thing, but he's got screens. He's a menace for screens.
Has he tore anything up in the camper?
Yeah, the back screen door.
Oh, that was...
And that was first thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because when we went hunting, that was blown out.
Yeah, they say dogs are expensive, and you don't really account for the Tundra headliner that's $1,300 that he absolutely destroyed. Yeah, that was a whole nother mess.
Gosh,
anyways. Yeah.
So you're taking off. You're heading south.
Yep.
Warmer weather.
You're
doing your walkabout.
I'm
leaving. We're both heading south. You're going southwest. I'm going southeast.
Yeah.
Heading down to. I'm going to Tyler Wrap. Get the boat truck wrapped. Tyler Wrap has done every single boat and truck wrap I've ever owned.
Yeah.
So I figure
they do a great job.
If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. Do they still hide the little
little Yeti in there?
The little Yeti in the wrap somewhere? Okay.
Yeah. A little Sasquatch. It's
Fun
in
fact.
there.
If you can find it every year, that's one of my first goals. But when you see Brandon's boat, look for the little. Am I giving away secrets that they have?
No.
Okay.
No, it's in. I'm pretty sure he does it in every wrap.
Okay. That's a bold move. I like it.
Shout out to Bobby.
So
good people.
So I know we kind of want to start it here too, is like the season's starting. Like it is, the off season goes by so fast, it feels like some ways. And in some ways it goes slow. But I think like for you, getting ready and going south, what does that is there something in your brain that switches like, okay, kind of like the brain clicks into a competitive mode, or is there something else that happens when you're getting ready?
It's a great question. I've never thought about it, but yeah, there is a switch. And I think it goes both directions, right? When the season's over, there's a bit of a switch that turns off for a little bit. And then, especially when you have like rough seasons like last year, felt like it was easier to like flip that switch off. But it does flip back on as you go into a new season.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone starts back at 0. At this point, we have no idea who's going to win AOI. It's fair game to everybody. And you just don't know what's going to happen. I've done this long enough that you can look at the schedule and say, oh, that lake's going to be awesome. That lake sets up great for me. At the end of the day, you don't know.
Yeah.
Because some of the ones that I thought were going to be the best ended up being terrible finishes. And then ones that I've done really well in came out of left field.
Yeah.
Places like Lay Lake. Like, it's a cool fishery. Always wanted to fish it. Didn't see me having a shot to win that one.
Maybe one of my favorite tournaments.
Yeah. I would say there's a change that happens as the preparation going into the season happens, because it takes a lot. I got the boats behind me. The RV's actually in front of me where we're sitting here. So everything's in the shop. Usually the RV's on the outside, but we move it in here, get it warmed up. I've been working on it, fixing things.
Yeah.
Anybody that's owned an RV knows that if you tow them around the country, at some point something's going to break. So I've been fixing some things on that, some things I knew that needed fixed, some things that I found as we were packing it. And so it's like as I begin to do that, that switch gets turned on. Yeah. So it doesn't seem like it's just an on-off light switch. It seems like it's more like you were talking about, like turning up the knob on the flame, and you're just intensifying that. And it really becomes real when that Tundra rolls out of this driveway.
Yeah.
And we're heading to the wrap shop. And then that's like officially the season starts. And it's almost like a rebirth every year. It feels like you're starting from scratch. You got a new boat. And like the anticipation of the unknown of what could happen. You could potentially be leaving the house, heading south, and walking into the greatest season you've ever had. And that's exciting.
For 100%. And I think the unique thing when you talk about that too is like how much prep you guys have to do beforehand. Like you and Tiff in general, because you guys, I think it's unique too how you guys live on the road you guys will be on the road till June this year.
Yeah.
But then you guys are home for a couple weeks and then you're back on the road again. And the prep to get the camper right, especially with 2 girls now, and getting everything dialed and ready to make the drive over there. And like sometimes too, you're driving through tough weather. Like honestly, I'm surprised it's not snowing like tomorrow or next week.
Well,
I'd put betting money on
it might snow. It's snowing in Louisiana and Florida right now.
True.
Florida and Louisiana have more snow on the ground than we do in Idaho.
That's wild. Yeah.
It's mind blowing.
Did you actually, when I was driving over here, I saw Ben Elkin.
Yeah.
Did you see what he got today on wherever he went? I just saw the Instagram photo.
No.
47 pounds, 5 fish.
Yeah. That's a different world.
Yeah. It's
a world I don't live in this time of year.
Yeah. No, I think, just your guys' prep and everything goes into that. And then you guys, like you said, start driving and that brain automatically clicks to like, and I think it's like a slow click too, probably like where it's like, okay, the boat's wrapped. Now we're heading to Florida.
Yeah.
Okay. We're at Florida. I'm getting everything situated. Is it kind of a bit of a slow roll into that like first day of the tournament practice, you're just like, oh, it's here. Like,
you don't want to be caught by surprise.
Yeah.
So you need to be thinking about it ahead of time. You need to be, mentally prepping going into that, because it is a long season.
Yeah.
And so the more that you can prep ahead of time, the better off you're going to be throughout the season. And me and Tiff actually had this conversation the other day, because I was like emptying out all my jerkbait boxes. I was completely like reorganizing them, color coordinating them, doing all these things, when realistically, and this works for some guys, like you could just grab the box. I don't know why you're laughing, right?
Because I know where it's going.
Oh, well, I don't know where it's going, so we'll see if you're right. But I was grabbing, and some guys will just grab that box, put it in their boat, be done.
Mm-hmm.
So I fully organize all these, take all the totes out, like go through all the plastics. If I didn't use it in the last 2 years, gone, save the weight. Or maybe I replace it with something, a new product, right? But if there's like a color that I thought I was going to throw, didn't throw it as much as I thought, I'll set it aside. Maybe I'll need it next year. But I went through everything. And so we're talking about this. I'm like, I feel like I'm on a treadmill. I'm doing all these things, but you're not seeing any forward progress. Like nothing's getting packed, right? I'm not putting anything into the back of the truck, or nothing's going into the camper. Some things go into the boat, but then it's like you do all of that process and it's done. And then when you put it into the boat, and it's like, okay, that box is in the boat, and then the next box, and it's like all of a sudden things start to go in motion, right? So you can feel like you're on this treadmill, like you're the hamster in the wheel, and you're just going and going and going and going. And then all of a sudden it's like you step off that wheel and you're actually making forward progress. You probably thought I was going to talk about controlling the controllables.
A little bit, but I want to stay on that a little bit too. Because I think what you're talking about is a really interesting topic too, because it's like, I think seeing instant gratification, like we're so prone to like, oh, okay, I didn't have success in 3 seconds. Like, I don't have that feeling of like, oh, I did something in 3 seconds, or, 30 minutes, an hour. And that's like packing your boat. You're doing a lot of prep work. It's a lot of things that are under the surface.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because like we're so prone to like, oh, I didn't see it. Okay, I'm going to give up, or like I'm not making progress. So I'm down now. Like, you know what I mean? Like I do that with other facets of life, but like it's interesting how that works too. Is like you don't, like you said, the treadmill. You don't see yourself making any progress, but essentially you're looking down and you're like, okay, I did work. I did some things. Things are in the boat now.
Yeah.
We're ready to leave to Florida or Texas tomorrow, or a couple of days from now. So it's interesting to see that, like how you describe it, of like you feel like you're on a treadmill.
Yeah.
And
for me, it's as much like physically moving as it is mentally.
Yeah.
Because when I like launched my boat at the first tournament, I want to have as much mental clarity as possible. And for me, I've just realized that I gain more of that if everything is in order. And right. So it's like, if there's more clarity in my life, even if it's just physical items of like being organized, being clean, whether it's in the back of the truck or in the boat, it feels like it opens up more cognitive thought, like more brain power to focus on the task at hand.
Yeah.
I don't feel cluttered when I have less clutter around me, if that makes sense.
Do you feel, there's so many, do you feel like when fishing is like one of the best things you can be in fishing is efficient? Like efficient with your time, efficient with your mental space, your clarity, like you said, like being.
It's a difference maker.
Like that's like when you guys say like everything's about preparation. You guys I always like when you guys are relying on everything every day. I'm just like, what's the guy that if it's good enough for your last cast, good enough for your first cast.
Big Show.
Big Show is
I will
100% my kind of guy.
I will never forget that. And to this day, I probably don't reline as much as I used to. I still reline a lot, but I mean, I used to fully strip every reel that got used, and he's like, hammer. If it was good enough for your first cast yesterday, it's good. Or if it was good enough for your last cast yesterday, it's good enough for your first cast tomorrow. Like, it makes pretty good sense, right?
Yeah.
So you think about when you're on the water, you're bombing away. Like, you are expecting to get a bite on your last cast, and you have zero hesitation in your equipment. You don't think that your line is going to break. You don't think your knot is going to fail.
Yeah.
You don't think any of that. But then as soon as you get off the water, you're like, I got to put all new line on and everything. And some situations require it. If I'm deep crankbait and there's a lot of stretch into that line and a lot of pressure on it, I'm going to reline that. Because it's just going to perform better. It's going to cast better. So there is some level of controlling the controllables, but then also letting go of things that are unnecessary, right? That are sucking time out of, that efficiency that you don't need to be doing.
Yeah.
And so it's identifying those, and that just takes time of identifying like what those things are. But that's sound advice.
I just always think it's so interesting that you guys take so much time to like reline everything, and like
hours.
Like it like everybody does it though, like, or at least most of the guys that I've seen around the fishing world. And I'm just like, it is one thing I do like commend you guys, because it's like, it's taking a variable out of potential. But like, it's so like fishing to me, and this is coming from where the like lowest of low knowledge in fishing. But it's such an interesting, like, what makes you a good fisherman? Because like I'll talk to friends who know nothing of what bass fishing is competitively, or even just fishing, and they will be like, so like I'll tell them what I do, and they're like, yeah, like, so what like makes a good fisherman good? Like, isn't it just like lucky? And I'm like, well, like, yes, but then like there's also a no. Like, there's very much like you might get lucky and find the right spot, and like I know you don't believe in like necessarily in luck.
There's an element.
Like you can roll up to a spot first day of practice and be like, oh wow, like this is easy. And then sometimes like you go back there first day of tournament and you just can't catch nothing. But there's so many variables in between like day one of practice and day one of tournament. And I always just think it's funny how
you know what luck is most of the time,
when preparation meets opportunity.
Correct.
I said it right. Yeah.
You said it right. So that is true in most cases.
Yeah.
The part that you don't have any say in is I can roll up to a place and I can throw the right baits, put myself in the right areas, prep all the tackle, do all the right things, make sure I got fresh line on, and put myself in areas that have big fish. I can't control if a 5-pounder bites it or if a 7-pounder bites it.
You can with forward-facing sonar. Just kidding. I had to plug it once.
I mean, yeah, potentially you could, but you still don't know which, like, you don't know if one of those is going to bite versus the other. So that's an element that you really can't control. But I think that goes to a lot of things, right? Like you saying you have bad luck with your camera equipment. Your lens is scratched.
Yeah.
If you put a lens cover on it, your lens wouldn't be scratched.
It's the same thing as I've just been trying to reline my camera equipment this entire time, basically.
Yeah.
Like I mean, like, I think like in fishing, like there is a bit of luck to it. Like I get where you're coming from too, but it's like a really interesting how tournaments go are won in the tournament, not
100%.
in practice. Because there's guys that have great practices, and then like day one, you're like, they like bomb, and you're like, holy cow! Like you're like, I thought that dude was on him. He said, which is an interesting thing. Cause like, and I'm not discounting what practice is. Some guys win in practice. They find the right spot and it like holds out. But like a majority of the time, like if you're not adapting during the tournament, like you're not going to win a tournament. Like to me, like sometimes and this isn't a dig on practice or anything, but because practice, we talking about practice.
We talk about practice.
No, but like it is interesting, like that dynamic of preparedness in practice and then in the tournament. And I think like, is there such a thing as over practice? Is there such a thing as like those things where you've gained too much information and it doesn't help you in the tournament and your practice actually hurts you because you're so married to that thing, that spot that should have them, but they don't. And you hold on to it because it didn't practice. Like your brain, like that's
preconceived notions.
Yeah. But then like, it's a really like
practice. It happens all the time.
100%.
Preconceived notions are one of the things that kill angler success more than anything. Whether it's your home lake and you're fishing like Club Derby or whether you're fishing the Bassmaster Classic, you look at a body of water at the time of year and you instantly form some preconceived notion of what should be happening. The level of strength of that preconceived notion determines how open-minded you are when you get there. And if you go there, like say you've had a lot of success at a body of water over and over and over the years, and then something changes and you have such strong preconceived notions, which rightfully so, if you had a lot of success doing the same thing the same time of year, but then all of a sudden something changes, right? It could have been a change 3 or 4 months before that you didn't catch. Those preconceived notions will just kill your chances at having success because you're so locked in to almost forcing that bite that you're not paying attention to what's actually happening.
But that even is in practice too. Like you can get too much information or preconceived notion of what's happening the 3 days before the tournament.
100%.
And like I feel like every tournament, it's like day one of the tournament's different than everything else. Like you guys will catch fish during a time of day that you're not even on the tournament time. So the fish aren't going to be there maybe during that time of the day. Like there's just so many variables with practice. And I think like I said, don't know anything about fishing, but being around it is there's so many things that like there's a sense of over practice that can hurt people. And
getting locked into one thing that doesn't. I just read an article about Jason Christie talking about that. Santee Cooper comes off a classic win and then has one of his worst elite finishes ever because he got stubborn and locked into throwing a frog. Had a good practice doing it, 25-pound bag. But then that went away and he didn't adjust soon enough. And that can happen, especially when you get on a bite that's one of your favorite ways to catch them or something that you have a lot of confidence in. You can be overconfident. That's why you see guys say they had, an absolute terrible practice and then they have a phenomenal tournament because they didn't have preconceived notions of how day one was going to go. They didn't have confidence in an area or a bait. It was like, I'm in survival mode. I have to figure out how to catch them. And then, so you're open-minded, right? You don't know if you're turning left or right out of the boat ramp. You make a decision based on where you think you can start your day, and then you just build off of that. And so you're taking it in like little incremental steps. And same can happen when you look at a season as a whole. You look at the schedule and you look at these lakes and you're like, okay, you try to form an idea of what you think is going to happen, but not get so locked into those that's what it is. And that's why, like my packing takes so long. I was like, okay, I look at the lakes. I'm like, okay, I think we might be doing this here. We might be doing that there. It could be this watercolor. It could be that color. Might be fishing grass, rock. And it's like, if there's things that I can eliminate, or I'm like, not going to throw those in the next 6 months, I'll leave them at the house. But odds are most of the stuff is coming with me when you're going to fish everything from Lake Fork to the Sabine River to 10 Killer. Like there's a lot of variables, you know, and we go to Hartwell in Florida and it's like, there's a lot of variables in there that you're going to have to adjust for. And you want to have all the right things.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to just being prepared. Like I think how you are a very, you don't leave a stone unturned. I feel like when you do those things, whether it be a hunt, because like this year when you were going on the sheep hunt, you were, made sure you had all, like I've always admired that about you is like, you're always prepared with gear. Like you make sure your gear's all right. You're going to be warm. You're going to not have a variable being cold during this.
Yeah.
You're going to have the right things that you need. You're going to be physically in shape. Like I always see that you're doing that. I admire that because I'm kind of just the opposite sometimes where I'm like, oh, I'll tough it out. I'm getting better at it.
I almost broke you.
But like, but there is something to that. Like where that is something you need to be in life and you need to be prepared and you need to know what you're going into. Because if you don't, I think you walk into things and you're going to be at a disadvantage. Like tough will only get you so far.
Yeah.
Like tough gets you so far. Tough gets you as far
tough
as.
Will get you along if you're a tough person, which you are. I'll give you credit. You're pretty tough.
But tough gets you exactly to the classic in Knoxville in like, what was it, 2019 or 20?
19. I think it was 19.
Yeah.
With the really cold one, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was brutal.
Yeah, it was 19. And then we got a repeat of it again in 20 for the Elite.
Oh, yeah.
But the classic is the one that almost broke you.
Yeah.
So little backstory on this is that day one was pretty warm. It was day two, right?
Yeah, I think it was day two. Yeah.
Day two, freezing cold. The coldest you can get, right? I would rather fish in snow and 15, 20 degrees than rain and 35.
Yeah.
Rain and 35 will just soak you.
8
even
hours,
if you have
8 hours of rain, not just a little bit of rain, a lot of rain.
Yeah. Even if you have good gear.
Yeah.
And to top that off, an hour plus run.
Yeah. And that was literally like, I will remember that. I will always tell people we've lived in Idaho in very cold temperatures and I've been in like really cold temperatures. But I will always say the coldest I've ever been has been in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
I was miserable on that hour boat ride to wherever we went.
Yeah.
And I remember my contacts were frozen in my eyeballs and because I just closed my eyes for like literally 40 minutes of that ride. And I get there and I go to open my eyes and I'm like, I can't see anything.
But you were tough for a long time.
Like 6 hours.
And the bite wasn't great. And so that always makes it worse. And I'm fishing down this section of riprap. And Kyle hasn't said anything in a while, which usually means he's either A, snacking, or 2, something's wrong. And in this case, he had already eaten all his snacks, so something was wrong. And I look over, and he's just stone cold, arms at his sides, his head is down, and he's not moving.
I think I had a hand on the monopod. Like I was holding I just remember
I don't even think you had a camera.
Oh, really?
I don't even think you were holding the camera at this point.
Oh, I could have swore I was.
Maybe it was like leaned up against you.
I just remember that was. You
didn't have gloves.
No, the gloves was the killer. That was my hands were so cold.
You didn't have boots.
Yeah.
I offered you boots in the morning.
I didn't think I'd need boots.
Yeah, he's like, I'll be fine. So you didn't have waterproof boots. You didn't have gloves. And I had asked you several times. You're like, no, I'm good. No, I'm good. So finally, I just drove over to you on the trolling motor and handed you a pair of gloves and said, put these on.
It was
like I had to force you into putting them on.
I didn't want to affect your fishing or like slow you down. But the other part of it was I was so mentally, like when they talk about like mental toughness and like the Marine stuff and like where they just doing like Hell Week, I'm just like I don't know if I could do it. I'd like to think I could.
What was that?
Like, I just felt like I was like mentally, I was just like trying to go to somewhere else.
Yeah.
to not be in that struggle of my brain.
I don't think I've ever asked you this. Was that like one of the biggest breaking moments that you've had?
Yeah, it was probably the most. That was the most I've
mental,
because it was like I was 6 hours in, and I know that sounds like a little bit of time, but like I was just like, it was raining all day, and you were in it too, obviously.
It was relentless.
But like I wasn't moving.
I was
like
warm.
I just wasn't like, when you're a camera guy, you're like, I'm not like casting or like really moving my body enough. And I think I just let my temp get so low that I was just like, it was brutal. I was so cold. Like I felt my body like slowly just giving up. Yeah. And it was like, I've never felt that. Like I would have rather been in like way worse temperatures and moving than sitting on a boat soaking rain. I wasn't soaked. It was like my hands and my feet were there. And then once those were bad, it was like, there's no stopping it.
And it just soaks up.
I just remember looking at you, and I just remember like seeing, and you were just coming towards me with the gloves, and I was like so happy. But then also I was like, this is so embarrassing. Like I was like, I'm tougher than this. But no, it changed my day. I was able to make it.
Turns out you weren't tougher.
I wasn't. I hit my threshold there.
But you've gotten smarter.
I have. And I think like every year I was so nervous to like try to get gear. Like remember the first year I showed up, like at Lake Martin was my very first tournament. And like
that one was cold too.
Brandon's like, oh yeah, want to go down south and film me fishing? I'm like, oh yeah, south in the winter sounds sick. It's going to be really warm. Well, it turns out Alabama in February is way cold, and Lake Martin was, at least. And I just didn't understand how bass boats work and how the passenger does not have a visor, and 65 to 70 miles an hour down the lake is a total different ball game. Yeah. So it was cold. Yeah.
You toughed it out though.
Yeah. But I do think having the right gear, making sure that you are prepped for that is like a huge game changer.
Yeah.
Just being ready.
This might even be a little bit of a test. Well, like what is one piece of gear that you just don't leave the dock without? Clothing wise, I would say like outside of underwear and things like that.
Oh, it's so like, honestly, bass fishing is a very grueling environment that you put yourself into, because you can be in the heat of Sabine, like at 100 and something and humid, and the sun is just beating on you for 8 hours, or you can be in like Knoxville, Tennessee, and just be so cold and wet.
Yeah. So what's one thing you never leave without?
I would never leave without my rain jacket.
Good job.
Yeah.
Pass.
Yeah. I just know like that's like a little bit of a break from wind.
I've had to get on you about that one.
Yeah.
Like, you got a rain suit? No? Get your rain suit.
Yeah. It just takes up so much space in my bag, dude.
It does take up space, but you bring up Sabine. Remember how hard it rained at Sabine?
Yeah. I mean, I'll get away without a rain suit at Sabine.
Yeah.
There's zero chance I'm bringing a rain suit to Sabine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just don't like the feeling of being like a drowned rat.
Well, like
I like to be dry.
Yeah. A warm rain I can deal with. Cold rain.
I don't even like warm rain on me.
I will say the Sims jacket I've had the last couple of years, like it has been unreal. Like all this stuff, but like game changer. The guys actually the first
even snowboard in it.
Yeah, the first year we filmed the ski film that we do, my kit was Sims all the way through.
Shout out the Potato Boys.
The guys at the resort, like sometimes when I'd at the resort, the guy'd be like, "Yeah, interesting, Sims." Like I was like, "That's what I got." So
the guys probably fly fishes all summer, and then he runs the lift in the winter at Schweitzer.
He's like, "Dang, didn't expect that," but hey, it worked the same.
Yeah, man, it keeps you dry, keeps you warm.
No, man. Kind of, I want to get into this too. I think it'd be really interesting. Is like, obviously, in the outdoors world, perseverance is huge, and being able to overcome things that are tough, whether it be growing up on the West Coast and trying to fish the Elite Series, or just fish professionally bass fishing, or like hard hunts. Those things that push you to your limits, where you're working, exhausting your body. What is one or a couple things that you think are important to have in your mindset for perseverance, or what has helped you like build a foundation of perseverance?
Say perspective.
Yeah.
We've talked about that before. But having a perspective of being able to look at it and, turn something into a positive, or realize that it's not life ending. I mean, there are those situations out there that obviously are very serious situations, but it's easy for the brain to transition into a negative mindset, because it's easier to do that. That's typically, negativity is the easiest route, right? Blaming somebody else for something, or blaming a situation, how you were brought up, where you grew up. It's easy to blame other things. And even though those can be a factor in how your life starts out, it doesn't have to be a determining factor of how your life ends.
Mm.
And so the same thing goes with a tournament or a hunt. Just because it starts one way doesn't mean that it has to end the same way.
Mm.
So when I go into events, right, even some of the events that I'm the most proud of aren't events that I actually won. You take like Bull Shoals, my second year on tour, I win that one, win by a big margin. I caught massive bags the first 3 days, and really quit every day by 10:30, 11 o'clock, and then just saved them. And on the final day, I caught enough to win. I think I still won by 7 or 8 pounds, but I didn't make the adjustments to catch them as good as I did the first 3 days. And then fast forward a couple months after that, we go to Green Bay, Wisconsin, and we fish out of Sturgeon Bay, and I end up finishing second in that event. But every single day, I had one area that I would catch my fish, and I catch them there day 1, day 2, day 3, and I would catch them pretty early, and then I would run up to where there was the majority of the anglers were fishing. It's just where most of the fish were. I just happened to find one thing off the beaten path that I had to myself. So I run up there, and I'd spend the afternoon up there. And what I realized is that every day the fish were moving a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And so it was like you'd check one shoal and it'd be 6 to 10 foot, catch them there. Day 2, nothing there. Now they're 12 to 14, and they're 16 to 18. So day 4 of the tournament, the wind switches. I catch one 4-pounder in the morning, and then I don't get another bite. And it's 12, 12:30, and I've got one 4-pounder, and I'm leading the tournament going into the final day. And I make the decision with, like, I don't know, I think I was going to have an hour and a half to fish. And I'd run all the way up to this one shoal that I never caught a bass on, but I had marked a couple rock piles on it. But I recognized and paid attention to the fact that those fish were moving deeper and deeper. And this shoal sat 22 to 25 foot. And I ran all the way up there, and I dropped my trolling motor, and I caught 4-pounders for almost every single drop until I had to leave. And I ended up getting beat, but I weighed more weight on that final day than I did the first 3 days. Mm-hmm. Jonathan Van Dam just caught him better the last day and beat me. But I was more proud of the decision making I made in that event than I was at Bull Shoals.
Yeah.
Even though I won Bull Shoals, that thought process of, like, just because a day starts one way or a tournament starts one way, it doesn't have to finish that way. Hunts are the same way. It's like you can have terrible weather at the beginning. Like this year when we went elk hunting, you finally ponied up and went for 2 days. The first day it just dumped rain. I'm like, we only have a couple days to film. We don't have just unlimited time. We're going to go. We put the rain gear on. We walk and walk and walk. And we don't hear a thing. We don't see any sign. We don't hear anything, nothing. And then like we get a little glimmer of hope at the end of the day. It's like, hey, we're going to go back. And then we get into them on day 2. And I was like, we didn't shoot one, but it was amazingly fun.
Yeah.
And we learned. So I think I feel like that was kind of a very long-winded answer, but having that perspective of like not giving into the cards that you're dealt and just saying, this is what I got.
Yeah.
Like everybody has the ability to either make changes physically or mentally to change their life for the better. And I think that's such a huge piece of it in anything. And then believing that everything happens for a reason.
Yeah. I heard something recently. It said, it might not be your problem. Like the situation that was dealt to you was your problem, but it's your responsibility with dealing with it. So like it's a
great one.
It is you might have been dealt terrible cards and you can just complain about it. And a lot of people do, and they never deal with it.
Yeah.
But if you get dealt terrible cards and you take the responsibility to say, hey, it's not my problem, but it's my responsibility to deal with it, is a huge perspective shift of like, for myself is like, hey, you might have something that goes wrong in your life, but you look at it and say, okay, I'm going to man up. I'm going to deal with it. And I'm just going to I'm going to shoulder it for a minute, and it's going to suck. But like after I'm done with the problem, one, you gain confidence in yourself. But I think also you kind of like, you build that like, okay, I can deal with hard stuff. And the same with hunt, same with fish. Like you don't allow that, like, cause I think a lot of us get caught in that like mentality of like, it happened to me. And like, it just, oh shucks, that's where I give up.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know if that's like, do you think that's a little bit of like, is that built into you or is it learned? Is it innate or like?
A little bit of both. Mm-hmm. I think it's part of your fight flight response and which one you're willing to tap into and go into, right? So you get into a situation like, is your brain wired to fight or flight? Are you going to just cower down into a situation, or are you going to stand up and, and kind of grab the bull by the horns and deal with that situation head on? Yeah. And that goes for anything. I mean, that can be a conversation with your wife, right? That you've been putting off, or your significant other that you're like, you need to have that conversation, but you've been holding it in. The best thing that I've learned is just to be open and have those conversations. And that's any relationship. Communication is key, but oftentimes we hold back from saying the things that need to be said. And then as you do that, you can paint a picture in your mind that is not actually what the other person is thinking. Yeah. And being able to, I guess, kind of work through that, and then doing hard things.
Yeah.
Because as you do hard things, even if they're simple hard things, cold plunging and, doing a workout, going for a run, like breaking a sweat, like every time you do a hard thing that you don't necessarily want to do, even if it's making your bed, you wake up and you're like, I don't feel like making my bed, and trust me, I don't wake up and make my bed every morning. So don't think that like I'm perfect in that sense. But just as an example, it's like you wake up, you don't want to make your bed. You make your bed.
Yeah.
That's a win.
Yeah.
Right. And so you start your day with a small win. They don't seem like much, but I think when you can do those things consistently over time, it builds that framework to deal with bigger issues, so that you're kind of building that mental toughness. You're building that stamina to deal with bigger issues, even though it's something as simple as like making your bed. But it's just putting yourself in a situation that you don't want to deal with something and you do it anyways.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge, huge part.
I think, and so much of that is like it's so easy to do the easy thing. It's comfortable. Like, I think like it's easy not to go to the gym, or it's easy not to make your bed or have that conversation. And like, I'm guilty of it. Everybody is.
I'm guilty of it.
But like, I think the biggest thing is like, for me is I like, in a way, it's like my confidence piggy bank, I guess. Like when I do those things, when I wake up, and I honestly have been making my bed almost literally every day, first thing. Like right before I get coffee, I'm like literally running to get coffee, but I'm like, it's just made. It's not like tucked in, but
but it's like, it's at least thrown
like I
back
did something.
over,
Like I've put some sense of like organization to chaos. And like, interesting too, like there's a Jordan B. Peterson book, the 12 Life Rules, I believe. I've been reading it, and that's one of it, is like order to chaos. Like, how do we put our life into order? And I think a lot of that's through discipline. But like you said, making your bed or doing something that's hard and going to the gym, those things like build that confidence in yourself. Like, hey, I can do that. So like when you do get a bad card that's dealt to you, and you say, okay, like it's easy to avoid it. There's so many ways you can take the easy route. And I'm not saying to like punish yourself, but like there's a lot of ways where you just like, hey, I'm going to face it head on, and I'm going to hit it, and I'm going to like get it done with, and I'm not going to complain about it. And like the more time that you take thinking about it sometimes is like, that's the deterrent of like, oh, okay, like I'm not going to go to the gym because
100%.
I was on my phone for 30 minutes. Now it's 8:30, or like, you know what I mean? Like it's these things that like, there's easy ways to get you out of a problem. But I think like if you just go after and do it and don't think about it sometimes, and like, just, hey, I'm going to hit it and get done with it. That's the best way. Yeah. And like, I don't know. I think that like in the outdoors, in life, that's a huge perspective to have. And also like going back on that too, is like, I think it's who you surround yourself with too.
Yeah.
I've noticed in my life, when I surround myself with people who are of that thread, of that cloth, it's easy to be like, hey, like Carl did it, Brandon did it, like Chad does it, like let's do it. Like there's no excuse. Like these guys do it every day. Yeah. And like that's I like,
it's like when your parents told you are who you surround yourself with.
Yeah, they're right. Yeah. They're right about a lot of things. Like, no, but it's true. Like it makes you like you rise to that level because that's just normal. And I think like that's an interesting thing, like of like, that's a whole nother topic, but like who you surround yourself with is a huge thing. And like,
it's like setting the standard. Yeah. Right. It's like, what is the baseline standard? Yeah. It's like, what is that level of greatness that you want to set as the baseline? Yeah. If you're just constantly hanging out with people that are just happy, just kind of going through life, not doing much, or if you're surrounded by people that are just go-getters, like constantly progressing forward in whatever bucket of their life it may be, whether you like it or not, you will follow suit in that. And that goes both directions, right? Good and bad. Surround yourself with a bunch of good people that are doing good things and are sound mentally, physically, spiritually. You will then gain those things too. Yeah. And everybody's going to have a different path through that, but it is a big part of it for sure. So I want to ask you this. What is the one, and it doesn't have to be like one thing. Maybe that's not the best way to say it, but like, what is one thing that you feel like you have overcame and has made you better? Like something that was a struggle, whether you saw it coming or didn't see it coming, that you've been able to, kind of push through, whether it was physical, mental, whatever it may be. We already talked about Knoxville, so you can't talk about that.
No, that was probably the most physical one. But No, there's so many routes you can go with this too. And for me, I think, uh, the biggest thing, I tend to care a lot about what people think.
Yeah.
Uh, and some people call it a people pleaser. Some people just being too nice. But like, I think one thing for me is like to um, know who I am, and
Hmm.
like know who I am
Yeah.
and be good in that and sit in that and be okay with it. Um, that's something I think that's like for me, like probably currently or like as of the last little bit is like that's been something that's really on my plate. Where I go like, hey, like I'm, and it's a weird trajectory to get in there, but like it's like, yeah, like knowing who you are and being confident in that and standing in that and being
Yeah.
okay with it, like being goofy and that's just who I am. Like you get it that way.
Yeah.
Like and not trying to change for people. I think like it's easy. I always joke with like my video friends is like we're around a lot of different crowds of people too.
Hmm.
And you find yourself trying to chameleon to those things sometimes, uh, which is an easy thing to do because
Yeah.
it's kind of your job, and then like there's a bit of that to it. But I think like it's a it's a slippery slope because like you start doing it in your personal life a little bit, and then you're
Hmm.
just like you're kind of like you kind of lose that bit of you. And I have a lot of admiration for a lot of people who are like, hey, I'm who I am.
Yeah.
Um, and that for me is probably like the biggest thing of like, hey, knowing who you are and like knowing who your guy is. Like Matthew McConaughey says it in Green Lights. He's like when he I can't remember the character,
Such
but
a good book.
it's an amazing book. But like his character in Dazed and Confused, he talks about like right before the scene, he's like, "Who's your guy? Who's my guy?" And
Yeah.
like, but he's talking about the character, but like in a way, he's like also saying like he knew who he is.
Yeah.
That guy knew who he is. Like so his character, like like knowing who you are is a huge thing, and like
It's also what allowed him to walk away from what, a $14 million
yeah, to
movie deal or something, because he's like, I don't want to do rom-coms
yeah,
anymore.
he wanted to purpose something else, and like no, I think like that's a huge thing, like knowing like we said in the last one is like knowing who you are, knowing where you're going, and
Yeah.
like knowing what you want. Like you got those three things and you're pretty unstoppable. Like
Yeah.
and I think that's like
And it
just
doesn't mean that you have to be uh trying to think how to say this.
concrete.
Well, you don't have to be um fully satisfied with who you are.
Yeah.
Be happy with who you are.
Yeah.
Know what your core values and your core morals are, and keep those as your solid foundation.
Mhm.
And really, you know, the people that you surround yourself with that know who you are, that love you for who you are, you know, lean into those things. But it doesn't mean that you have to be complacent with other things that you may look at and say, well, I want to make that better.
Yeah.
Like I want to be better in this area of my life. So it doesn't mean that you just get complacent. You're like, oh, I'm good with who I am. This is just what I'm going to be forever.
Yeah.
You can also look at it and say, hey, I want to change this. I want to get better at this.
Yeah.
And then you work towards that. And I think when when you start diving into things like that, like it gets a lot more difficult.
Mhm.
When you look and you're like, I want to mow the yard. Well, you know the steps to go mow your yard, right? You go get on the lawnmower. If you got a riding lawnmower, if you got to push, you push it. You might fill it up with gas, check the oil, you start it, you start doing lines, going back and forth, mowing your yard. When you start diving into like mental things or, even physical things, like you don't go to the gym one day or you go run once and you're like, okay, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
It's like it's doing those little things consistently over time. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow. You look
Yeah.
back at a photo or, you deal with a situation that maybe you wouldn't have dealt with good before.
Mhm.
Now you have a different framework and you're like, oh, now I know how to deal with this. And so there's a fine line there, right? Of like being happy with who you are at your core and knowing like kind of what your personality is. And maybe the best way to say it is like understanding the things that bring you joy.
Yeah.
Right. That bring you true joy and happiness, and not getting caught up in doing the things that don't.
Yeah.
Right. Of whether that's money or people's opinions, or, worrying about pleasing people or things like that. And so it's like, and there's a fine balance there, because it's a give and take. None of it's black and white that you can just dive into that. But
it's interesting too, the idea of wanting to always be better, to always better yourself, or how you can better yourself in some way, and having that perspective of like, hey, it's not like you go on a run and you're better. You lift and you're instantly ripped, or like, you know what I mean? You're in shape or whatnot. It's having that perspective of like, hey, it's a slow process and you got to stick with it. And it over time, it happens. It's like, that's why I say like the slow gratification, or not the lack of instant gratification.
Yeah.
Like is a huge gnarly thing for us right now, because like we deal with it on our phone, or you can have a little hit of dopamine doing this and this and this.
Or you could just go bass fishing.
Or bass fishing. That's the honestly, like I will say, like catching a fish, and this is a little bit of a change in topic, but like I wish everyone could go bass fishing and just get on them one time.
Yeah.
Like you could be like, bass fishing's like, but if you go out and you fish one time and you're just absolutely handing it to them, like that person will be like, I love bass fishing, and they're hooked. Like it's happened to me before. Like I love bass fishing. It's not maybe my favorite thing in the world, but like you catch them and you're like, I get it. Like when you catch them.
Yeah. It's like the last time we went.
Yeah.
You set the hook on the first one and you're like, man, I forgot how good that
There's
felt.
something special about it. There really is.
And it is amazing. And there's a level of dopamine hit to that.
Yeah.
And so it's being aware of that, right? And being aware of where you're getting those dopamine hits.
Yeah.
And which
like,
ones are healthy and which ones aren't.
Yeah, because I think a lot of it is like we've gotten so used to having this, like, I'm always supposed to be on this high, like, you know what I mean? Of like, and that's where I think like a lot of things you have to like remind yourself of like, hey, I got to go to the gym 5 days a week for a year, for 2 years, you know, like, but like, you know what I mean? Like you have this, hey, this is my operating, this is how I operate. And I'm going to continue to do it. It doesn't happen in 3 days. It doesn't happen in a month. Like you have to put your head down and do something hard. And like a lot of times that takes time. And like
that's the perfect like segue to where I wanted to go with that conversation, is that oftentimes when you look at a goal, right, to say, I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week for an entire year. A lot of people look at that and go, it's not happening, because it seems like such a grand goal, right? Like such a big thing. And I try to explain this to people oftentimes, and even myself when I have internal talks, which are important. Everyone has internal talks, so make sure you're nice to your inner self when you have those talks. But it's when you set a goal that seems so far away, whatever it may be. We'll use going to the gym as an example. Or we can talk about like sobriety. Someone struggling with alcohol or something, to just say, I'm going to be sober. It's so difficult for somebody to do that. That they never get there, right? Because it seems so far away. Like someone that truly has an addiction. Like I'm blessed that I've stayed away from having any addictions to anything other than fishing and hunting and things like healthy addictions. That you really have to just say like, I'm not going to take that drink, and then do it again, and I'm not going to take the next one.
Yeah.
You know? and like, okay, I made it through today sober, or I went to the gym today.
Yeah.
And then you get up tomorrow and you're like, I'm going to the gym again, or I'm not going to take a drink again today. And you do that over and over and over again. And eventually you will rebuild that framework.
Yeah.
Right. And you'll eventually, like, that addiction will go away, or you will create habit of going to the gym, and you'll start to see the success of it.
Yeah.
You'll start to see that the things change positively in your life, and then you'll get hooked on that. And you're like, oh, I'm just going to keep doing this.
But it's so hard to like that. That devil on the shoulder sometimes gets you after day 4. You're like, man, I've done pretty good. Like, maybe I should give myself a little reward, like that's the hard thing where you're just like, and that's where I come back to like the confidence piggy bank too, is like, you're like, hey, like I made it 4 days. Like I'm going to power through and get to the 5th day. And like, that's when that devil is like yelling in your ear and you're like, like, all right. Like,
yeah. And I think with that, it depends on what the goal is and what you're striving to be.
Yeah.
Because you can take it too far, where it's just really like, what are you willing to sacrifice? Like I've heard Rick Clunn talk about this, and it speaks to my soul, because he's talked about how he understands how he could go and win an event, or compete at a high level. He's always tried to get close to perfection, but not being willing to do the things that require that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've always felt like I know the formula to go and try to win every single Elite Series event in a year. I'm not willing to sacrifice my personal relationships and all of those things to go do it.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to walk away from my wife and kids, and because to have a shot to do that, the amount of time required would not be fair to anybody else.
Yeah.
And even though I have the most supportive support system in my wife and my kids, they don't really have a choice. They're not old enough to have a choice, but it's like you have to understand, right, that how far do you want to take it?
Yeah.
And then being okay with whatever that is.
Yeah.
Right?
What are you sacrificing? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. It's like, I still want to win every single event.
Yeah.
I know that I'm not doing all the things to give myself the best chance to do it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I can't. I'm just not making it as probable as I could.
Yeah.
It's possible. It's just not probable.
If it was more probable, you'd have to give up time with your family. You'd have to, and like those things, it's like when your burner's up high, and I don't think you can, there's maybe a very short window in your life that you will burn out, because like you don't, even when you're 22 and full of it all, and like you're ready to like just be professional bass fisherman and fish all the time.
Yeah.
That's a very short window, because like life is so much bigger than those things too. And yeah, it's interesting. Like, yeah, I've heard you talk about it before. We're like, hey, like, I know I'm not putting in what it takes to do all of this right now. But like, also I think you have an understanding of what the bigger picture of your life is too. Yeah. And I think that's important, but you're not going to go practice in all these places and be away from your family to do those things right now.
Maybe that's what the next conversation will be.
What's that?
Talking about like that balance.
Yeah.
Balance between quote unquote job versus family. And that last book, Wild at Heart, that one spoke to a lot of that. Like, I don't know, I guess what are you willing to give up to go do something, or like, because there is a part of me that has always craved that adventure
Mm-hmm.
and seeked out that unknown adventure that is at the core of masculinity.
Yeah.
And that is just how we were designed. And as I read that through the book, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense.
It hits you, doesn't it?
Because I feel that.
Yeah.
You feel that. That's why you're leaving on your walkabout tomorrow, which, ladies and gentlemen, is not an actual physical walkabout.
Might actually be physically walking about. Depends how the rest of my headliner works.
Yeah. What's left of your headliner.
Yeah.
So I feel like that there is that, right? And you, as men, boys, whatever.
Men.
Boys to men.
Yeah.
Not like the band. You have to know that that is in your soul. And some of us, it is beats stronger than others. But you have to satisfy that to be at your best in all facets of your life. And you know, going out and chasing those unknown things.
Yeah.
And like I could have stayed in Alaska during my goat hunt for I don't know how long until I just ran out of food or something. But other than my wife and kids, I didn't have a desire to come back other than to just see them.
Yeah.
Because I felt so alive out there. And I woke up refreshed and with so much clarity, which makes me think that the whole grounding thing is actually a real thing.
It's real.
But
it is. Yeah. But like to what you said, I think us as men especially need that adventure. And I think it, like when you came back from Alaska or when you go on these trips or like when you're out in nature in general, you come back with this clarity of like what is important, like in a very macro size of it too, micro also, but like you understand like when you're out in nature, you come back and you're just like, okay, I'm revitalized. I have so many friends that are like, I love, like when we go on the boys trips or something, like we come back and we're like, they're better husbands, boyfriends, just men, like, because you've had this, like you've had that satiation of like adventure and you're like, I'm ready.
I should read my journal entry that I did from Alaska.
You want to just hear mine too real quick?
And
today I ate a peanut butter jelly sandwich and my dog is still an absolute heathen.
Well, we don't have much time left for one of our cameras runs out.
We're good on this one.
But the journal app on my phone, didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah.
I like journaling every once in a while. Prefer handwritten, not writing it on my phone. But this is what I had. And the cool thing is you can add photos and things. So this is the day that I shot my goat. And it's not long, but I'm going to read it. I don't remember what it says. This is from November 14th.
It's a vulnerable moment. I like this.
This is, I don't remember exactly what it says, but I'm going to read it word for word. This is the way life is meant to be lived. Doing hard things with good people that make you thankful for the simple things. A little bit of sunshine after a freezing cold stalk on the mountain goats, warm toes, and frozen boots. When you strip away the everyday comforts of our normal lives, it is then that you truly feel alive. You can't fake it out here. The joy, the laughter, the heartbreak, and everything in between is real. I can't help but be thankful for a trip like this. Never in my wildest dreams did I see myself at 37 chasing mountain goats on Kodiak. Thankful that even though the invite was last minute, my mind and body are able to endure. And most importantly, I'm thankful for a wife and kids that are strong and confident enough to thrive while I'm on a trip like this. A best friend that encourages me to live rather than holding me back.
That's cool. That's cool.
And
how
I wrote
easily that comes out of your head in those moments is really special too.
Yeah. And I wrote that laying in a freezing cold, wet tent in the middle of Alaska.
Yep. Dude, that's some insane amount of like clarity on what life is for you. And like, you know what I mean? Like that's a huge, like there's gratification. There's gratitude in there.
Yeah.
Like you're like, wow, I have an amazing family that's allowing me to do this. I can't believe I'm here.
Yeah.
And I have an able body to do it. And like, that's a really special thing. And then just like really understanding like what you're doing and like puts it in perspective. I think it's huge. Cool. Stuff like that like is really special. Just like I love writing too. And like you're 1,000 times better writer in that way. But like, I think it's just like such a special place when you're out in nature and like you're in that situation where you're just like, you're on one of the epic adventures, dude.
Yeah.
And like you just, your brain, it's clear.
Yeah. It's amazing how that works.
Yeah.
Get some fresh air.
Simpler life.
Get outside. I mean, maybe you're outside running while you're listening to this. Yeah. I don't know. If not, go for a walk. Get outside. Go do something. We're going to get out of here. I got to pack for a trip still. I got to fly out tomorrow. Kyle's got to drive. I don't even know where he's headed, but
wherever the wind takes me, my friend.
That's the nice thing about the walkabout.
Westport, Washington, for surf.
All right. Well, I appreciate everyone listening. We'll have more of these conversations. It was a good one.
Yeah. Appreciate it, man.
So we'll catch you guys on the next one.